Just weeks before the election, the Biden administration is trying to ram through yet 6 more federal judges without adequate vetting from this committee. There are 6 witnesses on this committee. Each senator is given 5 minutes of questioning. That counts up to 50 seconds per judge. They're doing this because the record of these judges cannot withstand scrutiny. I'm going to limit my questioning just to a couple because that's exactly what the Democrats want, is no scrutiny of radical judicial nominees. I'm going to start with Judge Brindisi. Judge Brindisi, should biological men be able to expose themselves to unwilling women, including underage girls?
Senator, that's not a view I share.
So your answer is no?
Senator, I want to be somewhat careful because there are a number of cases that are working.
Is your answer yes? You said that's not a view you share.
It's not.
Then why, just a moment ago, Senator Blackburn was asking you about, as a congressman, you were a congressman from 2019 to 2021.
That's correct.
You were original co-sponsor of and you voted for an Orwellian-named extreme piece of Democrat legislation called the Equality Act. The Equality Act mandated that biological men could play in women's sports, could go to women's bathrooms, could go to women's locker room. The women were not asked. The women were not asked if biological men could go into their locker rooms and disrobe with them. You sponsored it and voted for it. You just said a minute ago you didn't agree with men exposing themselves to unwilling women. If you didn't agree with that, why did you sponsor and vote for legislation that would mandate that women be victimized like that?
Senator, it's been a number of years since I sponsored that legislation, and I do understand that
it's been 4 years.
There is.
It's been 4 years.
I understand, Senator. For the last 2 years, I have been serving.
I'm not asking about the last 2 years. You were a member of Congress. You sponsored it and voted for it. Why did you believe women and girls don't have a right to be free from harassment, to be free from biological men disrobing in front of them without the women or girls having any right to say anything about it or to protest anything about it? Why did you vote for that?
Senator, my recollection of the legislation is that it would prevent discrimination based on gender.
Your recollection is contrary to the explicit text of the statute. Are you fond of ignoring the text of statutes?
Senator, as a sitting judge now, and if I'm fortunate to be confirmed as a district court judge, I will follow statutory.
But you didn't when you were a congressman. You sponsored it, you voted for it, and by the way, to be clear, for some reason under Joe Biden, the state of New York really is getting hammered with judicial nominees. Another judicial nominee for New York was Judge Sarah Netburn, who on a similar issue ruled she had a serial rapist in front of her, a 6'2" man who was a serial rapist who decided to identify as a woman, and Judge Netburn ordered that 6'2" man to be incarcerated with women. Do you think the women in women's prisons have any right, and in particular a right not to be incarcerated, not to have a cellmate who is a 6'2" serial rapist?
Senator, I can assure you, if I become a district court judge, that I will follow the...
My question is, do those women have any rights not to be incarcerated with a 6'2" biologically male serial rapist?
Senator, I think every person has the right to feel safe, and I can tell you...
Then why did you sponsor and vote for legislation that did not protect that right and violated that right?
Senator, that was a time when I was a policymaker, and I do understand that there...
Okay, so those are your policy views. By the way, so do you have any regrets for sponsoring the Equality Act? You said apparently you didn't read the statute, you didn't know what it said. Do you have any regrets for sponsoring legislation that would force girls and women to be subjected to harassment from naked biological men? Do you have any regrets for that?
Senator, during my time being a legislator in the House of Representatives...
That's a yes or no?
I sponsored thousands of pieces of...
Okay, so you have no regrets about that. All right. In the remaining minute, I'm going to shift to Mr. Desai. Mr. Desai, you were general counsel to a major defense contractor. As vice president and general counsel for Honeywell International, you described your role as, quote, regularly providing advice regarding compliance with applicable international traffic in arms regulations. You've been at Honeywell since 2015. As you know, your employer faced significant and disturbing allegations of selling classified defense secrets to the People's Republic of China. Is that correct?
Senator, Honeywell International entered into a consent agreement with the Department of State regarding...
Is that a yes?
Senator, Honeywell successfully completed its consent agreement in connection.
Is that a yes? There were allegations that Honeywell sold military secrets to the People's Republic of China.
Senator, I'm not aware of any allegations of Honeywell selling any secrets.
In 28, so they just gave, okay. All right, I'll take your friendly amendment. They just gave military secrets. They exported technical data to China in violation of federal law of the tactical Tomahawk missile, the B-1B Lancer long-range strategic bomber, the F-22 fighter aircraft, the T-55, and CTS-800 turboshaft engines. Sadly, this appeared to be a long practice at the company. The State Department stated that between 2011 and 2015, Honeywell also exported drawings of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, of the B-1B Lancer long-range strategic bomber, and multiple other military weapons. Do you think it is appropriate for a federal judge to have presided over federal compliance at a company giving military trade secrets to the People's Republic of China?
Senator, at the time of the alleged exports, I was not responsible for that portion of the business. I was a litigation counsel in the business. Honeywell has successfully completed its consent agreement.
Are you saying you had no involvement with the issue?
Not at the time of the export, Senator.
What was your involvement?
Senator, I participated in Honeywell's work to successfully satisfy the conditions of the consent agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to each of you. Judge Brindisi, I want to just talk to you about the law. I'm not interested in what you believe. I'm interested in how you think. I want to start with reapportionment law. Can a state legislature draw election lines in an obviously, blatantly political way to favor one party over another?
Good morning, Senator Kennedy. My understanding of the law is that issues such as partisan gerrymandering are considered political questions.
Yes, sir, but can you answer my question first, if you don't mind? Because I've got 6 folks here in 5 minutes. Can a state legislature do that?
Senator, under the justiciability issue of political question, I believe the Supreme Court has held that those issues are political and not something that the court can review.
So is that a yes or no?
Senator, if they're drawing them for political reasons, as you put, and not for discriminatory purposes in any means, then I believe under Supreme Court precedent that would be a political question.
Okay. Is that a yes or no?
I think it's a yes under your scenario there. Again, Senator, I'd have to review the facts of the case and hear more about the reasons behind the lines that were drawn.
Tell me about the political question. I'm sorry. We were just talking about political questions. Tell me about the government speech doctrine. You'll see that a lot in federal court. Tell me about the government speech doctrine.
Are you referring to under First Amendment, Senator?
Yes.
So my understanding under the First Amendment that there are particular forms of speech that, depending on if it's content-based speech or content-neutral
Yes,
speech.
so that's on the private side. I'm talking about the public side. Do you know what the government speech doctrine is?
Senator, my 20-plus years practicing civil litigation and 2.5 years on the bench, I have not had the opportunity to hear or litigate any matters involving that doctrine, but certainly if it comes before me, I would thoroughly research it.
Well, you're going to have to bone up on it because you're going to see a lot of it. Let me put it another way. Does government have free speech rights?
Does the government have free speech rights?
Yeah,
Well,
we know you and I do, but does government itself have a right to free speech?
Senator, I would have to understand more of the facts of a particular challenge.
It's very simple. I'm not talking about individuals. We know that the government, state or federal or local, has to be very, very careful in restricting our right to free speech. I'm asking you about government. Does government have the right to free speech?
Are you referring to just an individual who serves in
No,
government?
I'm talking about somebody speaking for a government. If a governor stands up and says, I'm speaking for the state of New York, does government have the right to free speech? Yes or no, if you would?
Senator, again, in my 20 years of litigating civil litigation matters and 2.5 years on the bench, I haven't had specifically a case on that
I know,
particular
but have
matter.
you thought about it? I mean, there's a whole body of case law out there, my gosh. Did you study that in law school, Judge?
I'm sure I did, Senator.
Okay. Well, let me put it another way. If Senator Lee designs a special license plate that he wants to give people the right to purchase and put on their cars in Utah, and the government says no, and Senator Lee says, but these other folks design their own license plates, and the government of Utah says no, can the government of Utah do that?
Well, if the government is restricting certain kind of speech, content-based speech, it would have to undergo a strict scrutiny analysis.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. That came up in Texas. That's what the government speech doctrine is. Somebody in Texas said, I want to put a Confederate flag on a license plate. And Texas said, nope. And he sued, said just what you said, very famous Supreme Court case. And the Supreme Court said, government speech, government can do that. Do you know what well, strike that. Let's suppose there's a park, and that park has monuments in it. And Senator Lee says, I want to put my monument in that park too. I see all these others you let put in there. And government says no. Who wins? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I would have to review more facts of the case to determine.
You don't know who would win that?
Senator, I'd have to see more details from the case to determine the facts behind it to make a proper ruling on that type of a case.
Wow. Okay.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to each of you for being here and for your families for supporting you. Judge Brandizio, let's start with you. How do you define the term equality?
Good morning, Senator. Equality to me means justice for all, everyone being equal under the law.
Great. It was a topic of the Equality Act. Equality is something that we as Americans generally aspire toward, especially when it's equality and liberty counterbalancing each other. Is it equal? Is it consistent with your concept of equality to require a female inmate to share prison quarters with a biologically male inmate?
Senator, I want to be careful because I am a sitting court judge and a district court nominee, and I don't want to influence a potential issue that could come before me as a judge.
Make no mistake, I'm not asking you to prejudge any determination, any case that could come before you. Just asking that broad question.
Senator, these are very contested issues right now in our country, and I know that there are a number of court cases, specifically in New York State, where I am a sitting court judge on this particular issue that are working their way through the trial courts. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to weigh in on that issue that could come before me.
I understand, but as a recent member of Congress, you have weighed in by co-sponsoring the Equality Act, and the Equality Act, as I read it, would require that. How about sharing locker rooms, a female student being required in a school setting to share a locker room with biological males?
Senator, I sponsored a number of pieces of legislation when I was a member of Congress. I have over 4 years ago, given up that title as policymaker and have transitioned to a neutral arbiter sitting in state court currently. The safety of children is the utmost importance to me. I just don't think it would be appropriate for me as a sitting court judge to weigh in on an issue because these are specific issues that are working their ways through the courts right now.
Well, they're not working their way through the courts because this bill has not become a law. It's pending here. But let's move on to a more core legal issue. Parental rights. How do you define, how are parental rights under federal constitutional law defined?
Well, Senator, under the Constitution and under Supreme Court precedent, parental rights such as right to child custody, right to make decisions about child rearing are fundamental rights.
Yes, fundamental rights, and rights that under the Equality Act would be truncated in many circumstances. With if the Equality Act were to pass into law, could and would result in potentially termination of parental rights, removal of a child from the custodial possession of the parents under those circumstances. How do you reconcile that with Troxel v. Granville and its progeny?
Senator, I can tell you that if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed as a district court judge, I will follow the Constitution, I will follow the precedent that has been set forth by the Supreme Court and the Second Circuit on these matters if I am confirmed.
Did you apply a different standard, a different level of constitutional review as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives than you would apply as a U.S. district judge?
Senator, as a district court judge, my role, as I see it, would be to listen to the arguments from both sides before rendering any decision and making sure that I follow statutory constitutional law, and the precedent of the Supreme Court.
Mr. Desai, let's move to you for a moment. What's your understanding of Congress's power under the Commerce Clause?
Senator, under the Commerce Clause, Congress has the power to regulate interstate commerce.
And what does that entail?
To make acts that regulate commerce travels between the states primarily.
In your view, based on the precedent, what are the limitations on Congress's Commerce Clause power?
Senator, in my 17-year career as a commercial litigator, in-house general counsel, and in-house litigation counsel, I have not encountered or litigated this specific issue. If I'm faced with it, if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, I will thoroughly research the law, apply Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit precedent to the facts of the case, and render a decision impartially.
Okay. Let's talk about something more commonly encountered, Rule 12b-6. What does a complaint need to have? What does it need to do or not do in order to avoid dismissal under Rule 12b-6?
To survive a 12b-6 motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim, the well-pled complaint must be taken as true by the judge, and it must satisfy each element of the claim that is being sought to be dismissed.
How about the elements of a preliminary injunction?
Preliminary injunction require establishing a likelihood of success on the merits under Rule 65, as well as demonstrating no adequate remedy at law. It involves the assessment of the balance of interest between the parties, as well as the public interest. Okay.
One brief follow-up. How would you define your litigation experience? Looking at your resume, you've got an impressive academic and professional record. It's been primarily not in litigation. How would you define what your experience in litigation has been?
Senator, the majority of my career has been as a litigator. I spent 8 years as a complex commercial litigator at Osborne Maladon before becoming a litigation counsel and chief litigation counsel at Honeywell in 2 of the 4 divisions, where I managed a significant docket of commercial, personal injury, toxic tort, IP, qui tam matters, where I managed counsel and I directed strategy for those matters.
Okay, great. So this was not just M&A stuff, litigation nuts and bolts. Fantastic. By the way, just out of curiosity, I don't remember the full name of qui tam. I'm not going to ask you to answer that now. I'm going to look that up later. I can't ever remember it. It's too long. Thank you.